Well, I've finally got a few minutes here to share some thoughts um, of how everything's been going so far. I apologize that I haven't taken the time to stop and do more. Um, but I wanted to share some of the maybe struggles or things that uh, I didn't anticipate and just share some thoughts. Uh, One of the biggest difficulties so far has been the language barrier. Um, because of speaking a different language and not being familiar with Bengali, uh, it seems like there's really only surface level communication. It's really inhibited going into deeper spiritual conversations or things like that. Um, and because of that, it's kind of led to uh, I'm not able to help with words. I'm not able to really communicate things through words, and so trying to focus just on the physical ways that I can help, or something like that, which in this case is trying to help with the well repair, trying to um, source different materials, or uh, yeah, in general, just focusing on the physical aspect, humanitarian aid um, that I am here to do, and I want to do it. But unfortunately, I guess it seems like it's been almost entirely physical in the way that I'm able to help. Uh, and while it is fulfilling to know that we're able to help in that way, to help people get water or uh, things like this, it feels like it's lacking something when you can't really speak with them with words. It feels like it's lacking. Uh, it's kind of interesting. I really thought that I was going to come to a third world country with this idea that I'd come and see the poor and I would just know what it was like to love people. I thought it was just going to be a different feeling, like this is it. This is what God wants us to be doing. I thought it was going to be like a spiritual booster or something. And I have to say, like, I don't really feel much different here. Uh, a lot of the things are really the same, and in some ways, uh, while I thought it was going to be a spiritual boost, I definitely feel a hole in my life in some ways. Back home, where I was able to go out and preach on the weekends, in a lot of ways, that was a huge part of my spiritual life. Throughout the week, study and prayer would be dedicated to memorizing verses and just thinking about topics that I could share with people on the weekends. And that was basically what I was living for. That was my ministry and my goal. And here throughout the week, my only ministry is to physically be trying to help people get water, and it feels very lacking, like in comparison. Um, and so that's something that I do miss from back home. One other thing is that I'm not as strong as I thought I was spiritually. Uh, like I've been tested in a lot of ways that I didn't anticipate, um, with regards to just patience, humility, meekness, in various situations. But just the things that you might face in a culture like this, uh, where things are just really slow, like people are late, or just things don't go the way you expect. Maybe traffic is just very, it just takes hours or 2 hours to get somewhere and you didn't anticipate, or yeah, you had many things planned. Like I'm a very time-oriented person and want to get a lot of things done, and maybe you don't get anything done, and a lot of situations that can really test your patience and long suffering, or some other, like sometimes in miscommunication or trying to get something across through a translator can be so difficult. It might take saying it 5 or 6 different ways before almost you understand each other, and it can be it can be trying in a way that I really thought I was uh, more spiritually strong in those things, and it's definitely shown me that I have to grow. And I'm glad of that. I'm glad I'm seeing it now, and I guess being able to correct these things, and I hope I'm able to correct them. But I guess I'm just saying I wouldn't have known if I hadn't faced these things. And it's not this idea that you go to the other side of the country, the other side of the world, to a third world country, and it's just instantaneously like superpower spiritual wise. Like, you face the same temptations, the same struggles that you would back home in your workplace or wherever. Just having to get along and work with people. It's same thing. And so definitely Bangladesh has tested, the fruits of my life, and I know I need to grow in a lot of areas now, and so I'm thankful for being able to see that, that the things I've gone through have shown me that here. So I guess really the maybe point or message that I can deliver back to people who are in their own country, and maybe you're like me, you're feeling just like nobody here cares. Back in America, many people are just concerned with their possessions. They're concerned about their house, their career, concerned about entertainment and partying on the weekends or whatever. And they don't want to hear about the gospel. They don't want to stop and talk about spiritual things. And you have this idea that if only I could go to the other side of the world, people there would be ready to hear. People there would be more interested to talk about spiritual things. Think about this. On the other side of the world, you can't speak their language, and so none of that matters. Even if they're ready to speak about things, you don't speak their language, and so it's impossible. I want to communicate that don't pass up the time that you've got back in a country where you can speak the language of the people that you're with. That is so valuable, and I didn't really realize that until being immersed in another language where you can't hardly buy vegetables from somebody, and much less be able to preach the gospel of Christ to them. And so don't let time go by as you're back in America, back in the States. Go out and tell people. Go communicate them the things that Jesus has taught. Go into all the world and teach them to obey his teachings, and because that's a spiritual help that's invaluable. It's just as important as going out and helping the poor, is going out and preaching the gospel to those who are poor spiritually. And if you're anticipating going somewhere, going out to preach in another country, begin to learn the language. It is so important. I am trying to learn the language here, but it's slow, and it is difficult because I don't know how long I'll be here, whether this is a long-term project or not. But to anybody that has the view that you're in America and it's just, if only you were somewhere else, the grass is always greener, and I think it's always going to be like that. We're always going to have this anticipation that God has something better for us in the future, and we need to we always long for that next thing. But don't pass the day by. Go out and preach while you can, and you can help the poor where you're at. You can live more simply. Don't be caught up in the things of this world. That was, I guess, my perspective was back home. Like, okay, nobody here really cares about spiritual things. If only I was over in India or Bangladesh, where people were poor, then they would be ready to receive the gospel. They would be ready to hear. But now I'm here, and I can't speak their language. And so use the language that you've got in among the people that you're with, and you can still think about those who are poor physically, and live more simply, save money so you can give to the poor, sell useless things, and like Jesus taught, and sell what you have and give them to the poor, and then continue to preach. And I think that is the spiritual work that God wants us to be doing where we're at. So I don't totally want this to be like, don't worry about going to another country, it's not worth it. I'm not saying that. I've been really blessed with my time here, and I do hope to stay longer. But these are just some of the things that I have faced and wasn't anticipating. And so I thought maybe I could share these things, and hopefully it's encouraging to somebody, or at least exposes you to some things you might not have thought of. So, all right, grace and peace to everyone.